Today's lesson is Lesson 7, Fish Farms. Commercial fishing has been an industry for many a millennia. It is a dangerous work to fish in open waters with unpredictable weather, far from the safety of the shore. People who fish commercially need strong boats and equipment such as nets to capture large quantities of fish. Fishermen have a reputation as being tough. They are known to withstand difficult circumstances and overcome many obstacles. Some of Jesus' first disciples were fishermen that he found fishing and mending their nets. Brothers Simon, who was Peter, and Andrew were told by Jesus that he would make them fishers of men if they follow him. They left their nets and boats without hesitation and followed Jesus. James and John were also fishermen who were called by Jesus to leave their occupation to follow him. It has become increasingly difficult for commercial fishermen to satisfy the demand for fish and other seafood in recent years. Some places that are previously lucrative fishing grounds have been overfished. They no longer yield the same kind of supply. In other cases, the demand for certain species has increased so much that the commercial fishing industry cannot keep up. This is where aquaculture comes in. Aquaculture is a type of farming that raises animals and plants that live underwater as food sources. Raising fish. Aquaculture is not a new idea. In China, there is evidence that rice farmers raised carp in their fields over 2,500 years ago. The carp were farmed not only for their essential protein in the Chinese diet, but they also fertilized rice fields, adding important nutrients. And in Japan and Egypt, aquaculture was part of the food supply before 2000 BC, over 4,000 years ago. Today, the aquaculture movement is sweeping the globe with tens of millions of tons of fish being harvested and sold each year. In 2012, the amount of farmed seafood accounted for about half of the seafood consumed around the world. Economists and other experts on food supply believe that the demand for farmed seafood will only increase in the coming decades as the population grows. Because fish farmers have grown so rapidly in recent decades, there are many controversies around the industry. Some countries do not regulate the farm fishing industry, and farmers in these countries can use potentially hazardous chemicals to control bacteria and disease in their overstocked pens. Some bodies of water have significant pollution because of how densely packed the fish are, which can cause fish to die in large numbers and create even more pollution. About 90% of fish farms are located in various Asian countries. The U.S. imports approximately 90% of its seafood, but only about 2% of it is inspected. Sometimes what is legal in one country, such as antibiotics practices or chemicals, is not allowed in another. This means that the inexpensive fish in the freezer section of your local grocery store may not be as healthy as you would like to think. Fish farms in other areas of the world may combat disease, pollution, and parasitic infections. Some of the controversies around fish farming have to do with the tightly packed pens that put fish at risk for sickness, as well as the habitat destruction that often accompanies fish farming. Aquaculture today is not a one-size-fits-all approach. Some farmers use ponds, rivers, or lakes to raise their fish, while others have their farms located along the ocean shores or even farther out in the ocean. Still others raise their fish in more controlled environments, in tanks inside buildings. Each of these approaches require innovation to ensure that the fish remain healthy and the natural surroundings are not unnecessarily impacted. If fish are raised in ponds with no inlet or outlet, the farmer must ensure that the pond does not get overrun with waste. When they are raised in a natural lake, stream, or ocean, it is important to make sure that fish are not too overcrowded. Overcrowding can cause a number of health issues. Algae blooms uses up the oxygen, thereby killing the fish. Disease can spread into the natural habitat of other creatures that cannot be treated because they are wild. Indoor fish farming requires water treatment plants. These use large amounts of electricity and fresh water. Waste must also be disposed of in landfills or sewage plants. While there are a lot of concerns about fish farming around the globe, aquaculture done right can be an amazing thing. It has the potential to provide healthy protein in large quantities to people all over the world. There are many kinds of creatures that are farmed in aquaculture. Atlantic salmon are farmed along the east coast of Canada and the U.S., as well as in various European countries. Carp are still an important staple of aquaculture in Asia, along with tilapia, which is farmed all over the world in various environments. Catfish are farmed in the southern United States, while cobia are found on fish farms in the deep depths of the Caribbean, far offshore. Shrimp, oysters, scallops, and other shellfish are successfully farmed in many places in the world today. Some fish farms have made important steps towards becoming more sustainable. These include raising fish alongside other creatures that naturally clean the water of fish waste. Raising shellfish like oysters, mussels, and scallops down current from fish pens reduce the footprint of waste that aquaculture has become known for. Adding kelp to the equation further cleans the water. It acts as a natural filtration system that helps the environment the fish are raised in rather than potentially harming it. There are several innovative and natural solutions to some of the problems associated with aquaculture. A day in the life of a fish farmer. Meet Johnny. Johnny owns a huge fish farm that operates far off the coast of Central America. While many farms located in the ocean are safely tucked along the coast, his fish farm is located miles off the coast in water of up to 100 feet deep. His huge cages house fish with much more room to swim than is possible at coastal fish farms. Each morning he goes out to feed his fish and check on them. Once he has fed them, he puts on his scuba suit and swims around to check the cages. He looks for any potential issues with the cages that should be repaired before he suffers the loss of several hundred fish. If there are issues, he repairs the cage. One benefit he has observed over the years from having his farm far out in the ocean is that there is little pollution, because he can give his fish so much more room to swim than he could along the coast. Their waste does not pile up. The waves disperse much of the waste throughout the ocean, where it naturally is decomposed by organisms further down the food chain, like shellfish and plankton. The costs to operate this fish farm are far higher than if he chose a different way to do aquaculture, but he believes this is the most ecological, responsible way to provide healthy, reliable food for his customers. Equipment. The equipment used in fish farming is largely dependent on the type and location of the aquaculture operation. A farm that focuses on the production of shellfish needs vastly different equipment than one that has a focus on larger species of fish. In the same way, if a farm has a large kelp growing operation, it needs different equipment as well. Fish farming operations that are located on land need different equipment than those located in ponds or offshore in the ocean. In some types of aquaculture, fish are hatched and raised in protected hatcheries and then released into the wild with no more interference. In these cases, they are truly farmed, but they are not truly farmed, but rather used to stock lakes and rivers. Most fish farming in open waters, whether they are fresh, salty, or brackish, involves the use of floating cages. When you think of a cage, you probably think of something made of metal bars. Fish farming cages are made out of rope, similar to fishing nets, so they float and are easily repaired and managed. These cages ensure that the fish do not escape and can be carefully monitored. They are also the farm they also allow the farmer to know that the food supplied to the fish is not wasted and that they will be easy to harvest when they reach a marketable weight. Pond aquaculture provides the most controlled outdoor environment. Ponds can be as simple as holes dug in the earth as they can be made of concrete. Farmers raise many different species of seafood in ponds, from trout to catfish to freshwater shrimp. Farmers can add water to the ponds or use chemicals in the water to control the environment. Tank aquaculture is perhaps the most intense form of fish farming. Fish are reared in artificial tanks, either indoors or outdoors. The water must be filtered and cleaned regularly to ensure the health of the fish. Many farmers like the precise level of control they have over the fish environment in tank aquaculture, while others feel the environment is much more artificial than they would prefer for their fish. Some fish farmers who use tank aquaculture even use automatic feeders to control the exact amount of food used for each tank. Storage and processing. A lot of fish farmers sell fresh fish rather than processing and packaging it themselves. They sell their products to a distributor who will send them to a processing facility to be cleaned, packaged, frozen, and sold at a wholesale price to a grocery store or restaurant supplier. Some fish farmers who specialize in fish used in high-end restaurants develop relationships directly with these important clients. They ensure that the restaurant is happy with the product and that they always have access to the specific fish they need in their business. Once the fish have been harvested, they must be stored on ice or in refrigerated water. Controlling the temperature of the fish from harvest time until they reach the processing facility is important to ensure that they reach their destination unspoiled. Once they have been cleaned and are ready for processing, fish can be processed in many different ways. Some fish are cooked or smoked to kill bacteria and pathogens. This allows them to be stored longer than fresh fish. Some fish are canned to produce shelf-stable fish that can last months or even years on a shelf with no refrigeration. Other fish are sent to stores fresh, continually stored on ice until they reach the fridge in the meat section of your local grocery store. Finally, fish can be flash frozen to prolong its life and make it easier to ship and store. Once frozen, fish must remain at temperatures of at least minus 10 degrees until it's ready to be cooked. Fish that have been properly processed and stored arrive at your local grocery store or fish market, ready to be purchased and cooked into tasty dishes. Historically, fish was only eaten by those who live near oceans and lakes. Fish farms today seek to make seafood more accessible to places that do not have a strong seafood culture. As populations grow, the need for healthy protein continues to rise. Water covers a huge amount of area on our planet, but provides relatively little food to humanity compared to what we harvest from the ground. There are people that advocate for increased aquaculture in the world today. They believe the solution to food security is to use our massive water sources to produce food. Using these underdeveloped resources wisely can help alleviate poverty and malnutrition in developing nations and power the future of the developed world. Visit your local pet shop and learn about how they keep their fish healthy and their tanks clean. Instead, you could arrange a special fishing trip and try to catch your dinner. An extension activity would be to visit your local pet store and learn how they keep everything healthy. It's quite challenging to keep a sophisticated tank of fish healthy and thriving. Now, just imagine how much more complicated it must be to manage thousands of fish in a tank aquaculture. That concludes our lesson 7 for today.